Chapter 1, Critical Thinking and Political Culture. The subtitle of this chapter is Becoming a Responsible Citizen. To do that, there are several things that are required, but the first thing is learning to think politically. We are literally wanting people to critically think and focus on what can reasonably be believed, not be in the position where people can trick you, where people can tell you anything and you just believe it. And then once we learn how to determine what can reasonably be believed, then we can use that information to make political judgments. Now, the link that is there, and I will post the PowerPoint so that you can look at it yourself, is a story about a gentleman that actually shot several rounds into a pizza restaurant because he believed that there was a child sex ring being run by Hillary Clinton in the restaurant. And I hope that we can all agree that that probably did not involve a lot of critical thinking, did not involve a lot of sifting, it did not involve a lot of determining what can reasonably be believed. And as a result, property was damaged, no one was killed, but somebody could have been killed. There are some obstacles to critical thinking. One of them is that we have a tendency to get our information from questionable sources. And then that information is slanted. And sometimes even the information is made up. And sometimes the information just hides contradictory information. So we call that spin. And depending on where we're getting our information, sometimes we hear and see only what we want to. And the people have not been trained in journalism, or if they have, they're forgetting their training and they are presenting information that is questionable. And we have to get sophisticated enough to be able to go, no. Political leaders don't help because they will spin information themselves. When you were little and you and a sibling or a friend did something that you weren't supposed to do and somebody came and asked you what happened, there was a natural tendency to tell the story in a way that made you look a little bit better. And that's what politicians do. And this is a more recent phenomenon because we have more sources of information. We have scattered to our corners and sometimes will tune out information that does not agree with our worldview. And we get in so much trouble when we cannot have conversations, when we cannot actually consider why we disagree with information because we never hear information that we don't agree with, then it makes it harder for us to understand why we believe what we believe. We call that confirmation bias. We can have 5 people watch the exact same incident and interpret it 5 different ways. Boy, do we live in a time when that is so dangerous. That is so dangerous. The tool that we use to help us to think critically in this course is political science. And political science, of course, is the systematic study of government and politics. That sounds like a quiz question to me. So we use this discipline to help us think critically. And we are going to build these skills in this course. We use in this course reliable information about the United States political system and how it operates. We also use some generalizations, some systemic generalizations. We use a lot of Pew data. We use a lot of charts, graphs, information from the Census Bureau. And we look at past patterns, and then we look at major tendencies. There are always going to be people that veer away from those major tendencies and in certain demographics. And demographics is just a category. That is a good example of one of the terms that you will hear. And once we collectively start understanding the terms and concepts of political science, then we can move to a place of being able to think critically. You will hear things and you will start to hear terms and you will look at them very differently. Oh, now I understand what they're talking about. So I am excited about what we are going to learn. I'm going to tell you right now that I love this stuff, and I hope that we will all get to a point where we understand why we believe what we believe. This graphic just shows us one thing. The United States has a very high percentage of immigrants or children of immigrants, and it doesn't even have grandchildren of immigrants. If we're thinking about it technically, we all are immigrants. Even Native Americans didn't originally spring up in North America. They came from Siberia. They came from parts more south, and formed tribes. So if we are a nation of immigrants, how do we tell who Americans are? How do we define what America is? Well, one of the ways that we do that is through political culture. So every country has some widely shared and deep-seated beliefs about politics. And even when we differ, even when we are far apart on some issues, there are some things that are core to United States, whether you're a citizen or not. Now, a lot of the core ideals in the United States come from European heritage, and primarily European heritage of the first white settlers. So let's just talk a little bit about where those settlers came from. I love this graphic because it talks about colonial settlement. What did colonial settlement look like before 1700? There has been a project put forth by a group of people for the New York Times. They worked really hard on it. They called it 1619 project. The 1619 project actually lets us know that the first slaves were diverted and arrived in what is now Virginia in 1619. There were some people that came earlier than that, and they came to different parts of North America. If you look at the graphic, you'll see that people came from the Netherlands, the Dutch, and they settled in the northern part, what is now known as New York. When they first landed, they named it New Amsterdam. Then there were a lot of people that were coming from England, and they settled in Connecticut, Massachusetts, in Virginia, and then there were parts of Delaware where a lot of Swedes settled. Now, notice on the map that it talks about Jamestown. Jamestown was one of the earlier settlements from England, and the people in Jamestown did not fare well. They had to start over. If you have taken American history, then you know that they battled with weather. They battled with not knowing how to farm the land. People got sick. There was a little cannibalism, but eventually that settlement did thrive. So if we are all immigrants and we come from different places, and you cannot look at a person and say, oh, they are from America, then what are those core values? Well, Mr. Patterson posits that there are basically 4 core values for people that live in or immigrate to America. So not necessarily American citizens. It's what everybody is seeking and believes, and what does bind us together. One of those is liberty. The principle that individuals should be free to act as they choose. Boy, don't we act ugly when we think someone is trying to take something away. Many of the Europeans fled Europe to escape religious persecution. They wanted to be able to worship the way they wanted to without having the government say, you must do this, you'll be in trouble if you don't do this, this is the only religion that we recognize. Another core value is individualism. This is uniquely European. That whole concept that we are in control of our own destiny. And sometimes that makes us put blinders on. Sometimes that makes us not very empathetic. But we have a commitment to personal initiative and self-sufficiency. Our heroes have personal initiative and self-sufficiency. Equality is the third. Just that feeling that people should be treated equally. And finally, self-government. That the people decide and our elected officials appoint. So we either elect the people that do the job, or we elect the people that